When my parents vanished in that brutal car wreck on the slick highways of Iowa's corn country, my kid brother and I got hauled into the lawyer's stuffy office for the will reading. That day, with the rain pattering against the windows like bad omens, the lawyer dropped the bomb. My brother Landon scored the massive family farm, acres of golden soil worth over $1 million, plus all the cash stashed in banks from years of harvests and side gigs. Me? I got the creaky old wooden farmhouse out in the sticks, a forgotten relic crumbling under the weight of time and neglect. That very night, my fiancé hurled his ring across the table and bolted, only to wind up draped over my brother's arm like some trophy. It felt like the universe had sucker-punched me right in the gut, leaving me gasping. But when I finally twisted the rusty knob on that rundown door, what waited inside hit harder than any storm. Buried under the floorboards, a stash of yellowed papers mapping out a hidden family plot smack in the path of a new interstate, potentially worth $500 million if cashed in. I zipped my lips tight, channeling Dad's old mantra, that rugged Midwest farmer who'd hammered home, "Wealth's worthless if it poisons the ground that raised you." Yet in one fiery clash where Landon and my ex sneered like I was the punchline, I cracked. One rogue sentence, and the whole damn secret shattered like glass under a boot. From that instant, Landon and I were plunged into a vicious tug-of-war over the legacy, clueless that our folks were the puppet masters lurking in the shadows. And before we get back to the story, would you be kind enough to give this video a like? You know, every single like means a lot to me. It's the kind of encouragement that keeps me creating and bringing you even better stories tomorrow. If this hits home, tap like and subscribe. There's more you won't see coming. It all started crashing down on a foggy morning that felt too ordinary for the hell it unleashed. I was elbow deep in restocking jars at Mom's roadside stand, the air thick with the sweet tang of strawberry preserves, when my phone buzzed like an angry hornet. The state trooper's voice cut through, flat and mechanical. "Ma'am, your parents' SUV was in a pileup on I-80. No survivors found amid the wreckage." My knees buckled like wet cardboard, the world spinning as memories flooded in unbidden. A sunny picnic years back, Dad grilling burgers while Mom laughed at his corny jokes, Landon toddling around chasing fireflies. That snapshot of pure joy clashed with the nightmare now, twisting the knife deeper, making me question if I'd ever feel whole again. Weeks blurred into a numb fog until the lawyer's call snapped me back. Elias Grant's office was a no-frills setup in downtown, wood panels smelling of old coffee and regret. Landon sauntered in late, flashing that cocky grin, while I sat rigid, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Grant, a wiry guy with wire rims and a tie that screamed small town, cleared his throat. "Folks, condolences. Let's get to it." He read slow, each word landing like a hammer. "To Landon, the farm and assets." Landon's eyes lit up like he'd hit the lotto. "To Riley, the old homestead." Shock iced my veins. Betrayed by the people who'd raised me to value roots over riches. "Why?" I whispered, but Grant just shrugged. "Their wishes." Anger simmered as Landon chuckled. "Suits your dirt-digging style, sis." The ride home was a blur of fury building, layer by layer, until it boiled over. That evening, Travis waited in my cramped apartment, but his hug felt hollow. I spilled the guts, voice cracking, and he exploded. "A shack? While he gets the gold mine?" His face twisted, and for a split second, I saw the greed flicker, hinting he'd flip that land in a heartbeat if it were his. But no, I thought, clenching the papers I'd later find. I'd never sell out Dad's legacy. Travis stormed out, ring clattering, his parting shot. "You're small time, Riley. Landon's the real deal." Isolation hit like a Midwest winter, but curiosity dragged me to the old house. The drive stirred ghosts, fields whispering Dad's lessons. Inside, dust choked the air as I scrubbed, prying a loose board to reveal the box. Papers spilled, deeds to prime land. $500 million? Revenge tempted, rub it in their faces. But Dad's voice echoed, reversing my impulse. Honor the earth. Keep it secret. Months later, at the memorial, tensions snapped. Amid shares of fond memories, Landon and Travis mocked low. Rage peaked. "I've got Doc's worth $1 million?" The room froze, secret out, fallout looming like thunder on the horizon. "Hello, my name is Riley Hartman. I came into this world in a quiet pocket of Iowa, where the wind howls like a lonely wolf across the flatlands, and the soil clings to your skin like an old friend, or a stubborn enemy, depending on the season. Our weathered wooden farmhouse perched on the fringe of endless cornfields, a simple box of a home with a sagging porch that groaned under every step, like it was carrying the weight of generations. Inside, it was one big room that served as kitchen and living area, with a potbelly stove in the corner belching heat on good days, my parents' bedroom tucked behind a thin door, and a loft ladder leading to my nook upstairs, where I'd huddle under quilts that smelled of mothballs and hay. Winters were brutal. Snowdrifts piled against the walls like uninvited guests, and I'd wake with frost etching patterns on the window panes, my breath fogging the air as I scrambled down for breakfast. The cold seeped into your bones, making every chore feel like pushing against a tide. But it was just how things were. No use crying over spilled milk. Dad, Harlan Hartman, was the backbone of it all, a tower of a man with hands like sandpaper from years wrestling the earth. He had that classic farmer's build, broad shoulders from heaving bales, eyes narrowed from squinting at horizons, and a voice rough as gravel roads after a rain. A third-generation tiller, he'd inherited the plot from Grandpa and made it his life's mission to coax life from it, planting rows of corn that swayed like golden waves in the breeze. "The land ain't just dirt, Riley," he'd say, kneeling beside me in the furrows, his calloused fingers sifting soil like it was gold dust. "It's our bloodline. Treat it with respect, or it'll turn on you faster than a summer squall." He taught me early that farming was a dance with nature, give and take, never greed. We'd rise before the roosters, checking fences or mending equipment, and he'd weave in lessons like threads in a quilt. Don't bite off more than you can chew. The earth gives what it can, and no more. Mom, Clara, was the gentle current keeping us afloat, with her wheat blonde hair always pulled back and a smile that could thaw the frostiest morning. She juggled the house and part-time shifts at the local feed store, counting pennies like they were precious stones. We weren't starving. There was always stew bubbling on the stove or bread from the oven, but luxury was a stranger. Dinners were simple. Potatoes from our patch, maybe a chicken if the coop cooperated. She'd slip me an extra slice of apple pie on tough days, whispering, "Tough times don't last, but tough people do." Her love showed in the little things, like patching my overalls or humming old hymns while we washed dishes by lantern light, but she never softened Dad's edges. When I'd gripe about hauling water from the well, she'd say, "Your father's forging steel in you, girl. One day you'll thank him." Life was a grind, but it had its rhythms. I'd tag along with Dad to the fields, my tiny boots sinking in mud, learning to spot weeds before they choked the crops. One crisp fall, when I was about 6, money was tighter than a drum. Feed prices spiked after a dry spell. I snuck off to the roadside ditches, scavenging aluminum cans like buried treasure, crushing them underfoot and hauling a sack to the recycling center for a few bucks. That cash bought flour for Mom's baking, and though Dad found out and gave me a stern look, there was pride in his eyes. "That's the spirit, kid, making hay while the sun shines." Compared to the neighbor boy, Tommy from down the lane, who had shiny bikes and store-bought clothes, I felt like the odd one out. He'd tease me at the bus stop, calling me Mud Pie Riley for my dirt-streaked face, but I shrugged it off. His family had a fancy tractor. We had grit. Those chores escalated as I grew, starting with weeding the garden, then driving the mower at 7, straight as an arrow across the lawn. By 9, I was testing soil with kits Dad borrowed from the co-op, learning pH balances and how blight could wipe out a season if you weren't vigilant. Survival skills piled on. Backing a trailer without a hitch, spotting storm clouds brewing. It built from simple tasks to life lessons, each layer hardening me like calluses on my palms. At first, I saw it as drudgery, resenting the ache in my back after a day in the sun. But over time, a shift happened, like flipping a switch. I started appreciating the quiet pride in a well-plowed field, the satisfaction of knowing I could stand on my own 2 feet. Those years didn't just teach me to farm. They forged a resilience deep in my core, a stubborn streak that whispered, "Bend, but don't break." Little did I know that backbone would be tested when fortune finally knocked on our door, changing everything in ways I never saw coming. When I was 8, our luck turned on a dime, like hitting the jackpot in a county raffle you didn't even enter. Dad had been grinding away on that stubborn patch of earth, coaxing corn from soil that fought back every season when a big ag corp came knocking. They'd heard about his knack for sustainable farming, rotating crops to keep the land healthy without dumping chemicals everywhere, and they wanted him on board as a consultant. "Harlan, you're a walking encyclopedia of this dirt," the suit from the city told him over coffee at our kitchen table, papers spread out like a poker hand. Dad scratched his stubble, eyes wary, but the offer was too sweet to pass. Steady paychecks that dwarfed our spotty harvests, bonuses for hitting yield targets. Overnight, the worry lines on his face softened. No more fretting over seed loans or praying for rain. We paid off the tractor note, stocked the pantry without clipping coupons. It felt like breathing easy after holding your breath underwater too long. But mixed in with the relief was this quiet unease in my gut, like we'd traded something real for shiny promises. To celebrate, Mom threw a backyard bash that summer, string lights twinkling like fireflies against the dusk. Neighbors crammed onto our porch, plates piled with grilled sweet corn and her famous coleslaw. Laughter echoing as Dad cracked open cold ones from a cooler that wasn't half empty for once. "To new beginnings," he toasted, clinking bottles, his voice booming with a rare lightness. I ran around with the other kids, chasing glow sticks in the fields, feeling like we'd stepped into someone else's life. But even then, watching Dad shake hands with folks who'd pitied our lean years, a subtle envy crept in, not for the money, but for how it shifted the air. I loved the change, the way Mom's shoulders relaxed, but part of me wondered if we'd lose the grit that bound us. With the extra cash flowing, Mom quit her feed store gig and poured her heart into a roadside stand just off the highway. She hammered up a sign that read "Hartman Harvest" in bold red letters, shelves groaning under jars of her homemade jams. Strawberry rhubarb that tasted like sunshine bottled, peach preserves with a hint of cinnamon. The spot caught on quick. Locals swung by for fresh veggies, but truckers became regulars, honking as they pulled over for a quick snack. One grizzled driver, Earl from Nebraska, became a fixture, leaning on the counter with his thermos. "Clara, this jelly's better than my grandma's, and that's saying something," he'd grin, slipping her an extra tip. Business boomed, the cash register dinging like a victory bell, and Mom's eyes sparkled with pride she'd hidden during the tight times. It wasn't just selling produce, it was her claiming a piece of the dream, turning our bounty into something shared. That same whirlwind year, Landon burst into our world like a fresh breeze after a stifling heat wave. Born in the local hospital with Mom's freckles dotting his tiny nose and Dad's determined chin, he arrived when the farm was finally paying dividends. No hand-me-downs for him. His nursery overflowed with new cribs, stuffed animals plush as clouds, and outfits crisp from the store. I remember holding him that first night, his little fists waving as Mom beamed from the bed, exhausted but glowing. "Your brother's here, Riley. Now you're the big sis," Dad said, ruffling my hair with a softness I rarely saw. I took to the role like a duck to water, pushing his stroller through the fields, cooing at butterflies to make him giggle. But as the months ticked by, the differences started peeking through like weeds in a tidy row. While I'd scraped by with patched jeans and chores from Dawn, Landon got the royal treatment. Toys that lit up and sang, bottles warmed just right without a second thought. The abundance rippled out, reshaping us bit by bit. At first, it was pure bliss. No more skimping on holidays, even a new coat of paint on the house. But slowly, the indulgence took root. Mom couldn't say no to Landon's whims, and Dad, buried in his new consulting trips, let it slide. I'd watch Landon toss aside a toy after one play, shrugging like it was nothing, and feel a pang. Joy for his ease, but a whisper of envy that he skipped the lessons I'd earned the hard way. It escalated quietly. My chores stayed the same, building calluses and character while his world softened. I tried bridging it, teaching him to stack blocks like Dad taught me fences, but the gap widened, hinting at divides that would someday crack us wide open. As Landon grew from a chubby toddler into a lanky kid with Mom's easy smile and Dad's sharp eyes, the differences between us started showing up like cracks in dry soil after a long drought. I'd been raised on the farm's unforgiving rhythm. Up at dawn to feed the chickens, my hands raw from pulling weeds or mending wire fences that bit back if you weren't careful. Chores weren't optional. They were the glue holding our world together, teaching me that nothing comes free in this life. But Landon? He floated through those early years like a leaf on a lazy river, never knowing the sting of a skipped meal or the ache of a full day's labor. Mom doted on him, slipping him extra treats from the stand's profits, while Dad, buried in his consulting reports, let the indulgences slide. "He's just a boy," Mom would say with that soft laugh, as if his every whim was a harmless puppy. I loved him fiercely. Don't get me wrong. He was my little shadow at first, trailing me through the fields with wide-eyed wonder. But resentment simmered under the surface, a quiet boil as I watched him get handed what I'd fought tooth and nail for. One afternoon stands out like a sore thumb, a chore-sharing showdown that escalated from a simple task to a full-blown eye-opener. I was 10, knee-deep in the barn mucking stalls, the ammonia stench burning my nostrils and sweat trickling down my back like melting ice. Landon, 5 and full of energy, was supposed to help scatter fresh straw, Dad's idea to build some character. But he plopped down on a bale, whining, "This stinks, Riley. Why can't we play instead?" I gritted my teeth, shovel in hand. "Because the animals don't feed themselves, squirt. Come on, grab a pitchfork. It's not rocket science." He pouted, kicking at the dirt, and Mom appeared like a guardian angel, wiping her hands on her apron. "Oh, let him be, honey. Him be. He's too little for this mess." She scooped him up, promising cookies inside, leaving me alone with the steaming piles. Anger flared hot. Why did he get a free pass while I slogged through? It wasn't just the work. It was the principle. Like I was carrying the load for both of us. That night, as I scrubbed the grime off my hands, love warred with bitterness. He was my brother, but this coddling was planting weeds in our family garden. School only widened the chasm, turning small differences into gaping divides. By middle school, Landon was the golden child. New sneakers every season, a backpack stuffed with gadgets from the city catalogs Mom ordered. He'd strut into the cafeteria like he owned the place, kids clustering around him for a share of his candy bars, or to hear about his latest video game haul. Me? I was still farm girl Riley, showing up in hand-me-down jeans with mud-caked boots, my lunch a simple sandwich from home. The teasing hit harder then. A group of Landon's buddies, led by this smug kid named Jake from town, cornered me at recess one day. "Hey, Riley, still playing in the dirt like a pig? Your brother's got the cool stuff. Must suck being the leftover." They laughed, high fives all around, and Landon just stood there, smirking without a word in my defense. It stung like salt in a cut, escalating the quiet rift. I wanted to drag him aside, shake sense into him, but instead, I walked away, head high, telling myself blood is thicker than water. Deep down, though, resentment festered. Love for my brother tangled with the growing ache of feeling invisible. I tried bridging the gap, time and again, pouring my heart into big sister moments that backfired like a faulty engine. One crisp fall evening, as the sun dipped low over the fields, painting everything orange, I cornered him in the yard. He was fiddling with a shiny new remote control car Mom had surprised him with, zipping it across the gravel. "Hey, Squirt, want to learn something real? Dad showed me how to check the fence lines, spot weak spots before they break." I figured it'd connect us, like passing a torch. Landon looked up, rolling his eyes. "Boring, sis. Why waste time on that old stuff? We've got money now. No need to sweat like you do." His words landed like a slap, dismissing not just the task, but the values Dad had drilled into me. I pushed anyway, grabbing a toolbox and coaxing him along the perimeter, pointing out rusted wire and how to twist it tight. For a minute, he humored me, his small hands mimicking mine, and hope flickered. Maybe this would stick, but halfway through, he dropped the pliers, whining about blisters, and bolted inside yelling for Mom. She appeared, fussing over his poor little fingers, while I finished alone in the fading light. That reversal crushed me. My attempt to teach flipped into stark realization. He didn't want what I had to give. The gap wasn't just there. It was widening, pulling us apart like tectonic plates shifting slow, but sure. As the years ticked on, those small clashes snowballed into profound clashes of who we were becoming. I'd rise early for chores, finding peace in the rhythm of the land, while Landon slept in, emerging only for breakfast demands. He'd flaunt his toys at school, earning admirers, while I buried myself in books on soil science, earning eye rolls. Love persisted. He was still my kid brother, the one I'd defend in a heartbeat, but resentment brewed, a storm cloud on the horizon. An invisible wall rose between us, brick by brick, until he felt like a stranger in our own home. I clung to the hope that family ties would hold, but deep down, I sensed the cracks. Little did I know, those divides would only deepen when a certain mechanic named Travis wandered into my life, stirring up emotions that would test every bond I held dear. The widening gap with Landon left me carrying a quiet ache, like a bruise you don't notice until you press it. I threw myself into the farm, finding solace in the steady hum of chores, checking irrigation lines, hauling feed sacks, anything to drown out the sting of his dismissals. But that fall, at the county fair, with the air thick with the smell of funnel cakes and the distant lowing of prize steers, my world tilted again. I was helping Mom at the Hartman harvest stand, wiping down jam jars after a rush of customers, when Travis walked up. He was all lean muscle under a faded flannel, sleeves rolled to his elbows, a baseball cap tipped back revealing tousled brown hair and green eyes that caught the sunlight like a freshly cut field. "1 strawberry jam, please," he said, his Midwest drawl smooth as a gravel road after rain, confident but not showy. My heart did a little skip, guarded as it was from years of being the odd one out, but something about him felt like a warm breeze after a long winter. Travis wasn't just another fairgoer. He ran his dad's auto shop in the next town over, fixing tractors and pickups for folks who couldn't afford city mechanics. He had that grounded vibe, hands calloused from wrenches, not afraid of dirt, but not defined by it either. "Grew up wrenching on engines," he told me, leaning on the counter as the crowd buzzed around us, kids shrieking from the tilt-a-whirl. "Dad taught me to fix what's broke, not just toss it." His words echoed Dad's lessons about the land, and I felt a spark, a connection I hadn't expected. I handed him the jar, our fingers brushing, and managed, "You picked the best one, Mom's recipe, straight from our berries." He grinned, eyes crinkling, and I swear the fair's noise faded for a second. We got to talking, and it flowed easy, like a creek after a spring thaw. He hung around the stand, helping stack crates when a line formed, joking with old-timers about their beat-up Fords. "You're a natural out here, Riley," he said, watching me ring up a sale. "Not just slinging jam, you're keeping this place alive." My cheeks warmed, not used to praise that saw me. Not just farm girl Riley. That night, we wandered the fairgrounds together, a subplot unfolding under the glow of carnival lights. We tried our luck at a ring toss game, laughing when he missed every shot and I nailed a stuffed bear on my first try. "All right, sharpshooter," he teased, tossing me the prize. "You're showing me up." The crowd around us, families munching popcorn, teens flirting by the Ferris wheel, faded as we swapped stories. I opened up about the farm, the way Dad taught me to read soil like a book, and Travis listened, really listened, not like the kids at school who'd snicker at my dirt-stained hands. My heart, walled up from years of taunts and Landon's growing distance, started to crack open. I'd always kept folks at arm's length, too many jabs about my overalls, too many lonely lunches. But Travis saw the strength in it, the pride I took in the land. One evening, as we sat on hay bales watching the sun dip below the fair's skyline, he said, "You're different, Riley. You don't chase the spotlight. You just do what's right, like it's in your bones." His words hit like a warm drink on a cold night, melting my guard. I shared more, about the early days scavenging cans to help Mom, the way Dad's voice carried lessons heavier than any harvest. "That's real," Travis said, his hand brushing mine, sending a jolt through me. "Most folks would have given up, not you." The attraction wasn't just his easy charm or those green eyes. It was how he valued what I valued. Hard work, roots, the quiet dignity of a life well lived. Our connection deepened fast, like roots finding water after a drought. He'd swing by the stand after his shop closed, grease smudged on his cheek, and we'd talk late into the night, sharing dreams. He wanted to grow the business, maybe add a tire shop, see places beyond Iowa's endless fields. "But I'm not about forgetting where I came from," he said, squeezing my hand. "You get that, don't you?" I did, more than he knew. My shyness, that old habit of keeping my heart locked tight, flipped to a pull I couldn't resist. I showed him the farm one weekend, guiding him through rows of corn, pointing out where deer left tracks in the mud. He tried driving our old tractor, laughing when it sputtered to a stop. "All right, you're the pro here," he admitted, and I felt seen, valued, like I was more than the leftover sister. But even in those golden moments, a shadow lingered. As we walked the fields, the fair's lights long gone, I couldn't shake the memory of Landon's careless shrugs, the way he'd turned his back on the values Travis seemed to cherish. A small voice whispered that nothing this good lasts forever. Not with my luck. And as Travis's truck rumbled away that night, dust trailing in the moonlight, I couldn't help but wonder if this spark, this hope, was just setting me up for a fall. As the dust from Travis's truck settled that night, leaving me alone under a blanket of stars, I pushed down the nagging doubt, telling myself it was just nerves from opening up after so long. But as weeks turned to months, the cracks started showing, subtle at first, like hairline fractures in a windshield before the whole thing spiders out. Travis had always talked about expanding his shop, maybe adding a bay for heavy-duty repairs, but lately, his dreams ballooned bigger than a Midwest sky. "Chicago's calling, Riley," he'd say over diner coffee, eyes lighting up like he'd struck oil. "Franchises, high-rises. Why stick to small-town fixes when we could go big?" It wasn't just ambition. It was a restlessness that pulled him away from our quiet evenings, making me wonder if I was enough to anchor him. The first hint surfaced on a casual date at the local drive-in. the screen flickering with some old western under a harvest moon. We'd parked his truck, popcorn between us, when Landon roared by in his shiny new pickup, bass thumping, a gaggle of his buddies hanging out the windows whooping like fools. Travis's gaze followed them, lingering too long. "Look at your brother, living it up, no holds barred." His tone carried an edge, not jealousy exactly, but admiration that twisted my gut. I shrugged it off, popping a kernel. Landon's always been flash over substance, but he pressed, "Come on, he's got the farm humming, parties every weekend. Makes a guy think about grabbing life by the horns." The movie blurred as self-doubt crept in. Was I holding him back, my roots too deep in the dirt while Landon soared? It escalated from there. Subtle jabs turning to outright comparisons that chipped away at us like steady rain on a tin roof. One evening, as we strolled the back roads with fireflies dancing around, Travis spotted Landon's crew at a roadside bonfire, laughter echoing, bottles clinking. His friends, slick real estate types with gelled hair and designer jeans, waved him over, but he stayed with me. Still, later at my place, as we sipped beers on the porch, it spilled out. "Your brother's got it figured, Riley. Status, connections, why play it safe like this?" I felt the reversal hit hard. The man who'd once praised my strength now saw it as a chain. "Safe? This is real," I shot back, heart pounding. Dad taught me to value the land, not chase shadows. But his eyes drifted, disappointment flickering like a faulty bulb. "You're stuck in neutral while he's flooring it. Ambition ain't a dirty word." The pain gnawed deep, layering heartbreak with waves of self-doubt that kept me up nights, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy spin. Was I too rooted, too plain for his growing horizons? I tried holding on, planning dates to remind him of our spark. A picnic in the fields where I'd teach him to spot crop circles from deer beds, his laughter echoing as he fumbled with the binoculars. "See? This is us," I'd say, squeezing his hand. But even then, he'd glance at his phone, muttering about shop expansions, and the distance grew, inch by inch. Love warred with hurt. He was still the guy who'd seen me, but now his gaze wandered to Landon's flashy world. Arguments ramped up, from whispers to raised voices that echoed off the barn walls. One heated night, after spotting Landon at a bar with his entourage, Travis unloaded. "Why can't you aim higher, like him? Cars, crowds, instead of this backwoods grind." His words cut like a dull blade, reversing every compliment he'd given. "That's not me," I fired back, tears stinging. "And if that's what you want, maybe you're in the wrong place." He stormed off, leaving me crumpled on the steps, doubt flooding. Was I the problem, clinging to values while the world sped by? I held on by a thread, convincing myself it was a phase, but deep down, a storm brewed, dark clouds gathering that would soon unleash a torrent I never saw coming, the kind that uproots everything in its path. The storm I felt brewing with Travis hung heavy, like the air before a twister tears through the fields, but nothing could have braced me for the call that came on a gray November morning. I was at Mom's roadside stand, restocking jars, the sweet tang of peach preserves mixing with the bite of impending snow. My phone buzzed on the counter, and I answered, expecting a supplier. Instead, a state trooper's voice cut through, cold as the wind rattling the stand's awning. "Riley Hartman, your parents, Harlan and Clara, are missing after a pileup on I-80. Whiteout conditions. Wreckage found, no bodies." The words hit like a sledgehammer, knocking the breath from my lungs. My hands shook, the jar I held slipping and shattering on the floor, sticky red jam splattering like blood. "No," I whispered, as if denial could rewind time. My mind screamed, Dad's steady hands on the wheel, Mom's soft hums, how could they just vanish? Grief clawed at my chest, raw and relentless. A voice in my head chanting, "They're not gone. They can't be." Days blurred into a haze, like fog swallowing the cornfields. I moved through life on autopilot, keeping the stand open because it was all I had left of Mom. The community rallied, neighbors dropping off casseroles and hugs, their faces heavy with pity. At a makeshift memorial by the church, folks gathered under a bare oak, sharing stories. Hank from down the road chuckling about Dad's bad fishing puns, Aunt Louise tearing up over Mom's pie recipe. I stood frozen, clutching a lantern, unable to speak. A search party the first week fueled false hope. Volunteers combing ditches, shouting into the wind, me trailing behind, praying for a miracle. "They're tough," a deputy assured me, clapping my shoulder. "Farmers like Harlan don't go down easy." But days later, the search was called off, hope snuffed out like a candle in a storm. The court's death certificates arrived, stark and final, reversing my stubborn belief into a cold truth. They were gone. Travis was there at first, his arm around me at the memorial, murmuring, "We'll get through this, babe." But his warmth faded fast, his eyes darting to his phone mid-conversation, his hug stiff like he was already halfway out the door. One night, as I sat at the stand after closing, staring at Mom's handwritten price tags, he sighed. "Riley, you gotta snap out of it. Life moves on." His voice carried that same disappointment he'd shown when comparing me to Landon, and it cut deeper now, when I needed him most. "I'm trying," I snapped, tears burning. "They're my parents." He just shrugged, muttering about shop orders, leaving me alone with the ghosts of their laughter. His waning support was a fresh wound, piling onto the grief that kept me up nights, replaying memories. Dad teaching me to drive the tractor, Mom slipping me cookies. Was I losing everything? The inner monologue was relentless, a loop of denial and despair. I'd wake from dreams where Dad was fixing a fence, Mom humming in the kitchen, only to crash into reality's sharp edges. Landon's indifference made it worse. I called him right after the trooper's news, catching him at some bar, pool balls clacking in the background. "What?" he barked, annoyed. I choked out the crash details, expecting shared pain, but he cut me off. "Handle it, sis. I'm busy." Click. Days later, he swung by the stand, all new boots and slick jacket, acting like it was just another Tuesday. "They'll turn up," he said with a shrug, more interested in his phone than the weight of our loss. His casual dismissal fueled my rage. How could he not feel this void? The town mourned louder than he did, their flowers piling up on our porch while he partied. The escalation from clinging to hope to accepting the unthinkable wore me down. Each day, a heavier load. I'd walk the fields alone, whispering to the corn like Dad used to, begging for answers. The silence screamed back. Grief wasn't just sadness, it was a hollowing out, leaving me brittle as autumn leaves. Yet through it, I clung to their lessons. Dad's call to honor the land, Mom's quiet strength, hoping they'd guide me. As I locked the stand one drizzly afternoon, the phone rang again, slicing through my fog. Elias Grant's voice was crisp. "Riley, we need you and Landon at my office tomorrow. It's about the will." My heart lurched, not with hope, but dread, sensing the next storm was already rolling in, ready to upend what little I had left. The drizzle from that afternoon clung to me like a bad memory as I drove to Elias Grant's office the next morning, the weight of the will reading pressing down harder than the gray Iowa sky. His office was a squat brick building downtown, smelling of stale coffee and old paper, the kind of place where dreams go to get sorted or shattered. Inside, the air was thick, the fluorescent lights buzzing like angry bees. Landon slouched in a chair, scrolling his phone, his shiny new boots propped on a table like he owned the joint. Travis sat beside me, his arm brushing mine, but his eyes were distant, already halfway out the door. Elias, A wiry man with a salt and pepper mustache and a tie that looked like it had seen better decades shuffled papers at his desk. He'd been Dad's lawyer since the farm started turning a profit. A guy who knew every loophole in the county's land laws from years of helping farmers dodge creditors. "Let's make this quick," he said, voice gravelly from too many cigars. "Harlan and Clara's wishes are clear." He cracked open the will, reading in a monotone that somehow made it worse. To Landon Hartman, the primary farm, 320 acres, equipment, and all liquid assets, totaling $1.2 million. Landon's grin spread like wildfire, a smug "told you so" without saying a word. My stomach twisted, but I held my breath, waiting. To Riley Hartman, the old homestead on County Road 12, including its 5 acres. The room spun. That crumbling shack? The one with the leaky roof and warped floors we'd abandoned when money rolled in? It was worth a fraction of Landon's haul, pennies on the dollar. Numbness hit first, like I'd been dunked in ice water, my mind replaying Dad's voice about the land's worth, Mom's lessons on grit. How could they do this? Elias glanced up, his eyes softening for a split second. "That's it, folks. I'm sorry for your loss." Landon let out a low whistle, leaning back with a smirk. "Well, sis, looks like you got the short end of the stick. Guess you're stuck playing farmer while I cash in?" His buddies, hovering near the door like vultures, snickered, one muttering, "Farm girl Riley, right on brand." The room felt like it was closing in, their laughter a blade twisting in my chest. Travis shifted beside me, silent, and I waited for him to say something, anything to defend me. Instead, he gave a half nod, like he agreed with them. Disappointment flared into rage, hot and sharp. But I swallowed it, my voice barely a whisper. "Why, Elias? Why'd they do this?" He shrugged, stacking papers. "They trusted you with the homestead's roots, Riley. That's all I know." Outside, in the parking lot, the dam broke. Landon peeled out in his truck, music blaring, leaving me with Travis under the dripping awning. "Can you believe this?" I said, voice cracking, expecting his arm around me. Instead, he stepped back, hands in his pockets. "Maybe they saw something in Landon. Vision, you know? You're stuck, Riley. Always will be." His words hit like a freight train, reversing every promise he'd made about loving my strength. "What are you saying?" I choked out, rain mixing with the tears I wouldn't let fall. He tossed his ring onto the wet asphalt, the clink echoing. "I'm done. Landon's where the future's at." He walked away, climbing into a car with one of Landon's crew, leaving me alone, betrayal burning deeper than the will's sting. Self-doubt crashed in. Was I nothing? Had I misread everything? The drive home was a blur, my mind spiraling. Had Dad and Mom seen me as less? Was I just the workhorse, not the heir? Every memory, Dad's lessons, Mom's hugs, felt tainted, like I'd been blind to their true judgment. But as I gripped the wheel, rage overtook the numbness, a fire sparking in my core. No, I thought, I'm not done. They'd left me the homestead, and maybe there was more to it than a rotting frame. Determination surged, a vow to prove them wrong, not by selling out, but by digging deeper. I'd go to that old house, tear it apart if I had to, find out what they really meant. As I turned onto the highway, the sign for County Road 12 loomed ahead, beckoning like a challenge I was ready to meet. The sign for County Road 12 loomed like a dare, its faded letters barely legible against the dusk as I steered my beat-up Chevy down the gravel path. The drive to the old homestead was a quiet descent into memory, each mile stirring ghosts of my childhood. The crunch of tires over frost, Dad's low whistle as he checked the fields, Mom's laughter floating from the porch. My hands gripped the wheel tighter, still raw from the will-reading sting and Travis's betrayal. A double punch that left my heart bruised, but my resolve ironclad. The farmhouse came into view, a sagging shadow against the endless Iowa sky, its warped boards and peeling paint whispering neglect. I parked, the engine's sputter fading into cricket song, and stepped out, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. This was my inheritance, this relic of our lean years, and I was hell-bent on finding out why they'd left it to me. Inside, the house was a time capsule frozen in the early days, dust motes dancing in slants of fading light, the creak of the floorboards under my boots like a conversation with the past. I started cleaning, not sure why, maybe just to keep my hands busy while my mind wrestled with itself. The kitchen table was buried under years of grime. I scrubbed it raw, picturing Mom slicing apples there, her knife steady as she hummed. My eyes caught a faded Polaroid tucked under a cracked mug, me at 5, gap-toothed and grinning, perched on Dad's shoulders in the cornrows, Mom waving from behind. The memory hit like a wave. Dad's voice, "This land's your legacy, Riley," and Mom's nod, her eyes fierce with pride. My throat tightened, love clashing with the fresh wound of their choice to favor Landon. Were they wrong about me? Or was there something here I wasn't seeing? Hours into sweeping cobwebs and hauling junk, my broom struck a loose floorboard in the corner of the living room near the old stove. A hollow thud echoed, sharp and out of place. I froze, heart kicking up like a spooked horse. Kneeling, I pried the board loose with a screwdriver, splinters biting my fingers. Beneath it, a rusted tin box sat nestled in the dark, like it had been waiting for me all along. My hands shook as I opened it, revealing a stack of yellowed papers, land deeds, maps, surveyor notes, all stamped with official seals. I spread them on the table, my breath catching. The documents outlined a plot of our land, not the house's measly 5 acres, but a larger tract nearby, perfectly positioned where the state planned a new interstate. $500 million, maybe more, if sold to developers. The number hit like a thunderclap, dizzying and surreal. My mind split in two, a tug-of-war between revenge and value so fierce it felt like I was tearing apart. Part of me saw it clear as day, cashing in, waving those millions in Landon's smug face, proving I wasn't the leftover he mocked. I could picture his jaw dropping, Travis's too, as I outdid them both, trading dirt for a life of ease. The fantasy was sweet, intoxicating, like downing a shot of whiskey after a long day. But then Dad's voice cut through, steady as ever. "The land's our bloodline. Sell it, and you sell your soul." Mom's lessons echoed, her quiet strength urging me to hold fast. What would they think, seeing me trade their legacy for spite? The temptation surged, then reversed hard, like a tractor stuck in mud. This wasn't about money. It was about who I was, who they'd raised me to be. I shoved the papers back in the box, sealing it tight, vowing to keep the secret locked away, at least for now. But the weight of it didn't lift. Tension coiled tighter as I paced the creaky floor, the papers burning a hole in my conscience. What if I was wrong to hide it? What if Landon deserved a piece, or worse, found out? The stakes felt sky high, each thought a step closer to a cliff. I stuffed the box under my jacket, heart pounding, and locked the house, the night air cold against my flushed cheeks. Tomorrow was the memorial at Mom's stand, a gathering to honor them, and I'd have to face Landon and the town with this secret buried deep. As I drove away, the fields seemed to whisper, warning me that secrets like this don't stay buried forever. The whispers of the fields followed me all the way to the memorial at Mom's roadside stand, the tin box of secrets tucked under my truck's seat like a ticking bomb. The morning was crisp, the kind of autumn day where the air bites your nose and the sky's too blue for grief. Hartman Harvest stood proud by the highway, its red sign gleaming, jars of Mom's jams lined up like soldiers under a canopy we'd set for the gathering. I'd spent the night tossing, the weight of those deeds, $500 million worth, pressing on my chest. Dad's voice warring with fantasies of rubbing it in Landon's face. But as I strung lanterns around the stand, I steeled myself to keep it locked tight, to honor them the way they'd raised me. The crowd trickled in. Neighbors, farmers, truckers who'd loved Mom's preserves, each face a reminder of the life we'd built. I stood by the counter, forcing a smile, the box's secret burning a hole in my resolve. Folks gathered in a loose circle, clutching coffee mugs and sharing memories as the sun climbed. Aunt Louise, Mom's sister with her wild gray curls and floral scarf, stepped up first, voice cracking as she recalled Clara teaching her to bake pies at 15. She'd laugh when the crust burned, saying, "It's just love-baked crisp." The crowd chuckled, eyes misty. Earl, the trucker regular, shared how Mom slipped him free muffins on long hauls, his gravelly voice thick. "Clara was a damn saint." The stories wove a tapestry of love, each one tightening the knot in my throat. I wanted to speak, to share how Dad taught me to read the soil, but the words stuck, choked by the unfairness of the will. Landon rolled up late, his fancy truck gleaming, strutting in with a half-hearted nod. When he spoke, it was shallow, all flash and no heart. "Yeah, Mom and Dad were great, kept us fed, you know?" He shrugged, checking his watch, and I clenched my fists, his indifference like a slap. The air shifted as Landon's buddies, Jake and his slick crew, hovered nearby, smirking like they were at a tailgate, not a memorial. Jake leaned in, loud enough for all to hear. "Hey, Riley, still playing in that old shack? Bet it's falling apart just like your big plans." The crowd hushed, eyes darting to me. Landon snickered, adding fuel. "Yeah, sis, you're the queen of crumbs while I'm sitting pretty on the farm." My composure, held tight like a dam, started cracking. Travis, lingering at the edge with a new girl on his arm, chimed in. "Some folks are just meant for small time, right?" The taunts escalated, each jab a spark on dry tinder. My heart pounded, grief and rage boiling over, the secret clawing to get out. I tried staying calm, gripping Mom's old ledger, but the psychological weight, their betrayal, the will, the loss, snapped me like a brittle twig. "You think you've won?" I shouted, voice shaking as I rounded on Landon. "You got the farm, but I've got something bigger. Papers in that house worth $500 million. The words flew out before I could stop them. Raw and reckless, like a match dropped in gasoline. The crowd gasped, faces frozen in shock. Landon's smirk vanished, his eyes narrowing like a hawk's. Jake muttered, "What the hell?" And Travis's jaw dropped, his date forgotten. My stomach plummeted. Regret hit instantly, cold and heavy, like swallowing ice. What have I done? The secret, my one card to play, was out, exposed to the vultures circling. Aunt Louise grabbed my arm, whispering, "Riley, what's that about?" But I shook her off, chest heaving, the weight of my slip-up sinking in. I turned away, staring at the stand sign, Mom's handwriting curling across it, wishing I could take it back. The crowd murmured, whispers spreading like wildfire, and Landon's stare burned into me, calculating, greedy. I'd meant to honor them, to hold the land's value close, but in one moment of weakness, I'd lit a fuse. As folks dispersed, casting curious glances, I knew the storm was coming. Landon wouldn't let this go, and the fight for our legacy was about to explode. The whispers from the memorial followed me like a bad smell, clinging as I drove away from the stand, the weight of my slip-up about the $500 million land crushing me. By morning, the storm I'd feared broke wide open. A thick envelope arrived at my apartment, delivered by a grim-faced courier who didn't make eye contact. It was a lawsuit from Landon, stamped with legalese that boiled down to one thing. He wanted the hidden land, claiming the will was a mistake and the deeds mine by fraud. My hands shook, rage surging like a brushfire. That smug punk who'd shrugged off Mom and Dad's deaths now had the gall to drag our family's name through the courts? I crumpled the papers, pacing my tiny kitchen, the walls closing in as I pictured his smirk at the memorial. This wasn't just greed, it was betrayal, spitting on everything our parents taught us. Word spread faster than gossip in a small-town diner. By noon, neighbors were whispering at the gas station, their eyes darting my way like I'd stolen the family jewels. Aunt Louise called, her voice sharp. "Riley, what's this about millions? You hiding something from us?" Uncle Carl, Dad's gruff older brother who rarely left his recliner, chimed in at a family dinner, his fork jabbing the air. "If there's money, it's all our blood, not just yours." Even old Mrs. Jenkins from down the road, who'd always brought us zucchini bread, cornered me at the stand, her tone sugary but pointed. "You wouldn't keep secrets from the community, would you, dear?" The pressure circled like vultures, each relative sniffing for a cut, their sudden interest making my skin crawl. I'd thought family meant loyalty, but now it felt like a pack turning on me, and the isolation hit hard, a cold fist in my chest. The rumors snowballed into a media frenzy that turned my life into a circus. Local reporters camped outside my apartment, their vans clogging the street, cameras flashing like lightning. "Riley Hartman, is it true you're sitting on a fortune?" one shouted, mic thrust in my face as I ducked to my truck. A tabloid headline screamed, "Farm girl hoards millions," twisting my silence into guilt. Then came the vandalism. Someone spray-painted "greedy" across the old homestead's porch, the red letters dripping like blood. I scrubbed it off alone, paint thinner burning my hands, doubt looping in my mind. Was I wrong to keep the secret? Did I deserve this? The town I'd grown up loving now felt like a jury, and I was on trial with no defense. The worst came when Travis showed up, a false ally slinking back like a dog smelling scraps. He knocked on my door one evening, cap in hand, his green eyes softer than I remembered. "Riley, I messed up," he said, voice low. "Let's fix this. Together. Those papers could set us up for life." His charm was a hook, and for a heartbeat, I wavered, tempted to surrender the secret just to feel less alone. My heart ached for the days when he'd seen me, not dollar signs, but the reversal came fast, resolve hardening like steel. "You left me for Landon's flash," I snapped, slamming the door. "You're barking up the wrong tree." His footsteps faded, and I sank to the floor, loneliness crashing over me, but a spark of defiance burned brighter. I wouldn't let them break me. The harassment escalated, each day piling on pressure like stones on my chest. Reporters followed me to the stand, relatives sent texts demanding talks, and the vandalism spread. Broken windows at the homestead, more graffiti. I stopped answering calls, my world shrinking to the cab of my truck and the stand's counter. Doubt gnawed. Should I sell? End this? But Dad's voice echoed. "The land's our bloodline," and Mom's strength steadied me. I'd fight for what was mine, not for greed, but for them. Then, late one night, Elias Grant's number lit up my phone. "Riley, court date set. Be ready." My pulse spiked, the air heavy with the promise of a showdown. As I stared out at the dark fields, I knew the real battle was about to begin, and I'd face it alone, with everything on the line. The night before the court date, I sat in my truck staring at the dark fields, the weight of Landon's lawsuit and the town's judgment heavy as a bale of wet hay. My resolve was all I had left, a thin thread tying me to Dad's voice about the land's worth and Mom's quiet strength. The courthouse loomed the next morning, a gray stone building that smelled of wax and old books, its wooden benches packed with nosy locals and reporters itching for a scoop. I sat alone on one side, clutching the tin box of deeds, my palms sweaty. Landon lounged across the aisle, his lawyer, a slick city type with a shark's grin, whispering in his ear. Judge Whitaker, a stern woman with steel gray hair and eyes that could cut glass, banged her gavel. "Let's get this settled," she said, her voice echoing like a warning shot. Elias Grant, my lawyer, leaned over, his cigar-rough voice steady. "Stay calm, Riley. We've got the truth." But truth felt flimsy against Landon's smug certainty and the crowd's whispers. The proceedings kicked off with Landon's side painting me as a greedy hoarder, twisting my slip at the memorial into a con. "She hid assets meant for the family," his lawyer droned, flashing the deed's copies like a winning hand. My heart sank, the illusion of their victory tightening around me like a noose. Then a murmur rippled through the room as the courtroom doors swung open. Heads turned and my breath caught. There stood Mom and Dad, alive, weathered but real. Mom's blonde hair tucked under a scarf, Dad's broad shoulders filling the doorway. The crowd gasped. Landon's jaw hit the floor. I froze, relief flooding me like a spring thaw, but hurt lingered sharp. Why did they let me think they were gone? Judge Whitaker demanded order, her gavel cracking like thunder. Dad stepped forward, his gravelly voice steady. "We're here to set things right." Mom's eyes met mine, soft but resolute, as they took the stand. They explained the crash was a setup, a test to see who'd honor their values. They'd survived, hidden by a friend in Nebraska, watching us from afar. A flashback hit me. Dad driving through a blizzard, Mom clutching his arm. Their SUV skidding but swerving off-road, faking the wreck to vanish. "We wanted to see who'd keep the land's heart," Dad said, his gaze heavy on Landon. "The deeds Riley found? They're real, but they're a burden, not a prize. We trusted her to hold them," Mom added. "She chose the land over greed, even when it hurt." Their story unfolded, raw and unflinching. They'd seen Landon's parties, my stand shifts, my refusal to sell despite the world turning on me. Landon scoffed, his face red. "This is a stunt! I deserve that land!" His lawyer tried objecting, but Judge Whitaker shut him down, her voice cold. "You've said enough, Mr. Hartman." The crowd murmured, some nodding, others glaring at Landon. Aunt Louise in the back wiped tears, whispering, "Clara, you always knew." My relief warred with lingering pain. They let me grieve, let me break. But their trust in me burned brighter, pushing back the hurt. Elias stood, his tie crooked, but his argument sharp, laying out the deed's legal tie to me, sealed by their intent. The judge's eyes softened as she ruled. The homestead and its assets belonged to Riley Hartman, per her parents' wishes. Landon stormed out, his crew trailing, their greed's victory shattered by truth. The crowd dispersed, reporters scrambling for quotes, but I stayed, facing Mom and Dad. We didn't hug, not yet. "Why?" I asked, voice cracking. Mom's hand found mine. "To make you strong, Riley, and you are." Dad nodded, pride in his eyes. "You're the land's keeper now." We walked out together, the deed's mine, not for millions, but for legacy. At the stand later, I hung a new sign, Hartman Legacy, and reflected as the sun set. The hurt lingered, but family was mending, stitch by stitch. I'd lost Travis, nearly lost myself, but I'd held the line Dad drew in the dirt. The land wasn't just soil. It was us, and I'd carry it forward, no matter what storms came next. If this moved you, like, comment, and share, then subscribe and watch the next story on our channel.